Father in heaven, we are grateful for this time. We ask that you speak to us as individually and as a church. And we ask that you help us to keep this in our memory. In your name we've prayed. Amen. I have titled my message, A Daily Reminder. Most of us have reminders on our phone. It could be an alarm that we have that tells us that maybe it's morning, we have to go to work, or other times we have certain things that tell us what to do. Some of us have weekly reminders, some of us have yearly reminders, because not all of us are good with dates. Some of us forget birthdays, and sometimes we are queried why we forgot someone's birthday. So we have these reminders on our phone to help us to at least not forget. So we sometimes get these reminders maybe an hour or some few minutes before time. When you want to travel somewhere, sometimes you have to set a reminder just so you'll be able to prepare. But today I don't want to talk about the weekly reminders or the yearly reminders we have. I want to talk about something which must happen every day. And so I'm going to dwell on Luke chapter 22. When we read the accounts just before Peter had made a promise to Jesus that he's not going to betray him, up until the time that he betrayed Jesus, Jesus turned and looked at him and he was reminded of that promise. So when you read Luke chapter 22 from verse 31, we are told that Jesus predicts Peter's denial. And Jesus called Peter, Simon, Simon, indeed Satan has asked for you that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for you that your faith should not fail. And when you have returned to me, strengthen your brethren. Jesus was trying to tell Peter that it is possible you will fail. So I'm praying for you so that you do not fail. But I want you to fully rely or depend on me so that you will not fail. But Peter said to him, Lord, I am ready to go with you, both to prison and to death. Both to prison and to death. So this is Jesus trying to tell Peter that be careful, you might fail. And Peter knows his strength. He knows I know it's no child's play, but I am not going to betray you. The fact that he even mentions that even to death means that no matter what, he's not going to betray him. Then Jesus tells Peter in verse 34 that I tell you, Peter, the rooster shall not crow this day before you deny 3 times that you know me. It is strange to walk with someone for 3 years, and then at the critical moment, the person tells you, I don't know you. So if someone should tell you that maybe you will sit with me in Beulah for 5 to 10 years, and then on a day when maybe some people want to attack me, and then I am not the person, or maybe they are trying to find someone or fish for someone, and then they mistakenly think it's you, and then you see someone you've known from Beulah for a long time. You can ask him, I'm not called that person, and the person says, I don't know you. It will not just be the people trying to attack you. It will be the shock that you have to experience that the person will tell you, I don't know you. You'll be shocked. So it is that we have betrayals, but some of them will shock you to the core. So for Jesus to tell Peter that you tell me you don't know me, I'm sure Jesus will be saying in his mind that I don't think this, if he's really the Savior, I don't think he knows what he's saying. How will I say I don't know you? Maybe I'll say something else, but to say I don't know you will be something strange. But I said, if you read the account of Jesus with the disciples, almost every point that you hear Jesus having a conversation, Peter will speak. We have such friends sometimes in school or in church. Hardly will the person come to a Sabbath school discussion and be quiet the whole time. Then he wasn't there. Like you will hear him speak. Even if he doesn't know the topic, he will say something. And that is who Peter was. The Bible doesn't just call him an outspoken person, but he always had a point to make about almost every issue. And so when you read the account still in Luke chapter 22, verse 54, when Jesus was arrested, history tells us that it was a cold night. And so the verse 54 says, having arrested him, they led him and brought him into the high priest's house. But Peter followed at a distance. Now when they had kindled a fire in the midst of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat amongst them. That was his first. You could tell from the progression that, because it says first that he followed at a distance. And then it's a cold night. A fire has been lit. People sit around to keep themselves warm. And then Peter draws closer and sits with them. And this is an evening where the one who is known around as the preacher has been caught. Obviously, men will have a discussion. It's like right after maybe or just before a Champions League final game, or maybe during an election night when the numbers are coming in and people are seated in a courtyard. They are having a conversation. Peter should have known that if I sit amongst them and they start talking, I can't keep quiet. So he could have still stood at the distance and just watched them. But he sat amongst them. And I'm sure a conversation would have ensued. So people are having a conversation. The Bible doesn't tell us that the first time Peter was discovered as a follower of Christ, he had spoken. But you could infer that Peter will not be quiet. The verse 56 says that, and a certain servant, seeing him as he sat by the fire, looked intently at him and said, this man was also with him. I wanted us to see certain things from the screen, but I will just have to do it from here. Okay, so the first thing we notice in Peter's account is that he stood at a distance, he drew closer, and as he drew closer, someone could tell just by looking at Peter that this man is with the one who has been caught. And I say that sometimes our dressing, our general appearance says a lot about who we are. And sometimes even where we come from. Sometimes we don't have to say anything. When people see us, they can tell where we are coming from. When you dress and you are going to church, people in your house know that you are going to church. When you are going to work, people can tell. I know there are times that those who work in the corporate area, it could be that we can't even tell where you are going because you are always looking prim and proper. But there are times that someone could tell that you are going to church. And sometimes it's maybe by holding a Bible or by how in a hurry you are. Even sometimes when you are getting closer to the airport, you can tell when someone is missing their flight or someone is hours ahead. Just by the way they are appearing, how they are running, you can tell. But a few verses after, he says that, so the first time he denies that I don't know him. Jesus has said you will deny. And he has denied the first time. We know the story. He denies the second time. And then about an hour later, so it means Peter continued to sit amongst them. And I could imagine after an hour, how many times he would have spoken. So after an hour had passed, another confidently affirmed. So this time the person was confident. Surely this fellow also was with him, for he is a Galilean. And I'm sure after Peter's first two responses, his accent gave him away. I teach in an Adventist academy. And the first time I got there, when I started teaching, I was the only black staff. But there are black people who are also born in America. So it doesn't mean I'm coming from Ghana. But when someone comes to my class and I speak, the person doesn't need to know where are you coming from. He already knows Minfri Kromuha. And I've told my students, those I've taught for 2 3, I told them, I won't change my accent. When you speak yours, I understand. When I speak mine, you should understand. I'm not doing any locally acquired whatever. I'm just giving you what I came with. This is what I've spoken for the last 30 years. You get the same thing. So Peter's accent gave him away. And like I said, sometimes even how we speak tells people who we are. So for Peter, we are told that first, his appearance gave him away. Next, his accent gave him away. And it goes to confirm what Jesus has said. So the verse 61, which we read, says that, and the Lord turned. This is after the third time which he said that, I don't know what you are saying. And then we are told that verse 61 says, the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the words of the Lord. No, sorry, it says that immediately while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed. I just want to imagine when he was not done speaking, he was still speaking. So I don't know where he would have paused to be reminded that Jesus said, you are going to betray me. And then we are told that Jesus turned and looked at him. You can tell the shock in the face of Jesus. Because for someone who said, I'll go with you to death, Jesus had not even been killed yet. And you're already saying you don't know him. Wait to the point where you are about to be crucified with him. And then maybe you say, oh, he went all the way. But he gave up first in the presence of mates. This is a man who had pulled a knife to cut the ear of Marcus when the soldiers came. And now in front of mates, he was almost cursing himself that he doesn't know him. But the point of my message is the crowing of the rooster. Those who were born, maybe I'm not old, but I'm older than some people. Those who were born in maybe not too long ago, they didn't experience the Christmas time when you have a cock tied somewhere, and you know that his life is short. He's about to die. But before the cock dies, it will give you some sounds in the morning. So when you hear the rooster crow, you know that someone is about to die. Like at least it's in the morning, you hear it. But you do not hear it. Maybe it doesn't happen that maybe when you have it tied, it doesn't happen that on a certain day, the rooster will say that for today I'm on break. I'm not going to crow. You will hear the crowing of the cock or the rooster. So it is a sound that should not evoke any alarm. But it had the most profound effect on Peter. This morning I heard some roosters crowing around. It doesn't evoke any alarm. It is normal. It tells you that it's morning. Or sometimes they'll crow in the evening. But a rooster crowing moment tells us a point where you discover, in the Ghanaian parlance, you say that some years back, you say that you discover your real size. That you might have been boasting to people that you were so confident and everything, but the crowing of the rooster makes you realize that this is who I really am. Maybe I was just showing off to Jesus that I can go with him, but a rooster crowing moment identifies a weakness in us. It tells us a moment where maybe we disappointed people, a moment where you had a failure in your life. I call it a rooster crowing moment. A moment you experience a failure. It could be an exam, it could be academic, it could be in your business field. A moment you disappointed family and friends. I call that a rooster crowing moment. Maybe there's a scandal or something about you and you disappointed a family or a friend. A time when you broke a promise you were confident you would keep. A rooster crowing moment. A moment or a time in your life you broke a promise that you were confident you were going to keep. A time where you vowed in church that you were done with a particular sin, and then few moments later you fell back into it. I call that a rooster crowing moment. A moment, like I said, where you realize your real size. And a moment where we come to terms with the limits of our abilities. There is no denying fact that most of us have abilities. We are able to do a lot of things that people are proud of. But it is a moment where we come to terms that there is a limit to what I can do. In the mind of Peter, I'm sure that moment tells him that maybe I could go with Jesus, but not all the way, like I thought I could. It is a time we discover that we are human after all. And we are not superhuman beings. We are another human being. And the quotation in Ephesians 2:8-9 tells us that, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is a gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. Sometimes we look at the things we can do in church. I remember there are times when I was here and worshiping with Pino, there are times I'll go to church. I might not even have completely studied the Sabbath school. And immediately I walk in, the person leading the Sabbath school stops for me to continue. And somehow I finish the lesson with them. And there are times when I'm Thursday, and I know that when I was reading, I didn't get to how am I able to? And so maybe sometimes you look at, or maybe you didn't prepare to sing. Someone calls you out of the blue. Can you do a song for us? And then you do it excellently, more than even someone who has prepared for weeks. Or maybe the preacher didn't show up. Can you stand in for us? And then you deliver a wonderful sermon. But this text is telling us that we are not to boast of the things we sometimes think we're able to do. Let us look at these three instances of Peter before the crowing of the rooster, when the rooster crowed, and then after the crowing of the rooster. Before the crowing of the rooster, when you look at Peter, he seemed confident of himself, and some of us are like that. Before the crowing of the rooster, this is before he betrayed Christ. He almost seemed flawless. There are some of us, when people look at us at church, it is as if we don't know the word called S-I-N. Like we don't know what that is. We can't even spell sin because we are not familiar with it. Some of us almost seem flawless before a rooster crowing moment. Some of us are esteemed highly among even the supposed righteous folk. These were 12 people following Christ. And even though no one had done any ranking, I'm sure if people even pass by them and see the 12 walking with Jesus, they'll know that Peter is number one. There was no ranking, but I'm sure in the mind of Peter, when he looks at Judas sometimes, I'm far closer to Jesus than this guy. He had seen almost every event in the life of Jesus. When you read about the 12, he saw the transfiguration. He saw Jesus walking on water. He saw Jesus feeding. He saw every miracle of Jesus. Not all the 12 had that experience. There are times Peter pulled Jesus to the side and was trying to accuse Jesus. He saw almost everything in the life of Jesus. So there are times we seem spiritually better than others. This is before the crowing of the rooster. When you read the story of the prodigal son, most of us look at the boy who left home, took his inheritance. But before he got home, I'm sure when you read the accounts, and then that sometimes when we are told this story in children's Sabbath school, we are told about the older brother who was obedient, stayed home, and didn't ask for his possessions. But until his younger brother came home, the prodigal one came home, no one could tell that he had an unforgiving heart. He was not ready to accept his younger brother. He had a self-righteous claim on himself, and he was very critical. But it was until before the boy got home, the younger brother, nobody could tell he had an unforgiving spirit. So like the older brother who was at home, no one could tell. There are times when we sit in church and, someone has done this. And before we get into that, everybody thinks this is the saint in the church. When you read the account of Prophet Elijah in 1 Kings 18, I sometimes, when I read that chapter, 1 Kings 18, I put myself in the shoes of Elijah. You could tell the pride with which he walked. One man against a nation, if it was to be done in a Hollywood movie. 1 Kings 18, Elijah meets the people of Israel on Mount Carmel. 850 priests and prophets of Baal. They conjure all their magic. Nothing happens. He prays and fire from on high comes. Imagine if you were Elijah at the time, how you will walk. You pray, fire comes from on high to consume a sacrifice. One man against the nation, and he defeats them. I'm sure everybody will tell that this man is a confident, like someone who doesn't care who is in front of. Ahab was there. And he was there with his entourage. The 850, the whole nation was there, and he still defeated all of them. And he beheaded the 850 priests and prophets of Baal. Imagine the pride in the heart of Elijah. This is 1 Kings 18. 1 Kings 19, the first 6 verses. Elijah is running away for his dear life at the threat of one woman. He had stood unafraid in front of 850 priests and prophets. He was now afraid at the threat. Jezebel was not there. She sent a message. And Elijah was running for his life. To the point that he ran, the Bible tells us that he ran from, so for example, if Ghana was where Elijah was, he ran from the topmost part of Ghana, maybe the northern part, went down south, not just to Accra, but the southernmost part of Accra. And then he prayed for death. If he wanted to die, why didn't he just wait for Jezebel to kill him? Jezebel had given him a 24-hour notice that he will not be alive the next day. He runs a day's journey only to pray that, now kill me, God. But that is the point. Someone who had stood unafraid in front of 850 priests and prophets was running for his dear life. Before the threat, I'm sure if you read the account of Elijah, and it is only up to where he conquered the priests and prophets of Baal, I'm sure you say that this is a confident man. But few verses, I'm sure you change that adjective you had used for him. Why is he running away? He left his servant. He did all of that. But it tells us that before the crowing of the rooster, before a failing moment in our lives, we almost seem flawless. But when the rooster crows, the time or during the crowing of the rooster, what happens to some of us? Some of us, when we fail, we leave and we never get back on the right track. Like Judas. Judas failed, Peter failed, but Judas, he never got back. Some of us, we weep and we ask for forgiveness from God, like Peter did. And I pray that is our portion, not the first one. And sometimes, like Prophet Elijah, we act foolishly, that we run away from death only to pray that we should die. And some of us, we stop being active for God. For some of us, when we experience that failure in our lives, that is the end. We don't see. You can check through your life, and this is very, very personal. Some of us have never been like we were before. After a certain failure in our life, maybe some news about us went abroad and almost everybody heard about it. And even though we show up in church, we are never like we were before. And sometimes it might not even be you, but if you look around, you could tell. There are people who have never been that active like they were before, just because of. It's not that I'm belittling the failure, but after that failure in their life, some of them have never gotten back on their feet like we knew them to be. You can even find some of those out in politics. There are people who are very loud or were always on radio. Now they are it's almost as if they don't have a voice. But in the church, it also happens to us individually. But after the crowing of the rooster, the good news is that God never gives up on us. He still yearns for us to come to him. When you read the account in Mark 16 verse 7, Jesus said, or the angels said, no, this is Jesus speaking, Mark 16, 7. He says, but go, tell my disciples and Peter that I'm going before you to Galilee. So the good news is that Jesus was trying to tell Peter, I know you failed. I know you said you don't know me, but you prayed and I have forgiven you. So he's reminding Jesus could have said, go tell my disciple. Peter was part, but he stressed on the name Peter, telling him that I haven't given up on you yet. Romans 5 verse 8 tells us that, but God demonstrates his love toward us in that while we were yet still sinners. Jesus did not wait for us to stop sinning before he died for us. When we didn't deserve it, he died for us. What do we say to that? And the good news is that after the crowing of the rooster, when you read the account of Peter, he was greater after, not before. Before the crowing of the rooster, Peter's shadow was not healing anybody. But after the crowing of the rooster, when you read Acts 5:29, Peter said, we will obey God rather than man. He could now stand in front of men and still say, I will obey God. He was not running away again. He wasn't saying, I don't know you. This is after, not before. Peter preached on the day of Pentecost and 3,000 souls were added to the church. This is after, not before. It tells us that some of us might have experienced failure in our lives, but it should not stop there. The point is, the rooster crowing moment, it is not to tell us that keep going down. No. It is to tell us to come back, because the point is, and there's this thing that I love about God, that when we take 1,000 steps away from him, we don't need to take 1,000 steps back to him. We just have to turn around. Because the good news is he would have followed us all the way. He's just waiting for us to turn. The prodigal son didn't walk all the way to his father's house. His father met him on the way. He's waiting for us to make that U-turn. So the rooster crowing moment is not to tell us to keep going down in our sin. When you think of Elijah, after he had prayed for death, after he had gone into the Mount Horeb to pray for death, that is not where his story ends. He comes back, he anoints Jehu, he comes back, he passes on the mantle to Elisha. His story doesn't end there in his failure. And I pray it never becomes that of us. But why, this is the last part of my message, why the crowing of the rooster? Why? Why didn't Jesus use any example? Maybe perhaps it was to tell Peter never to forget. But my understanding of the crowing of the rooster example that Jesus used for Peter was to serve as a daily reminder that but for the grace of God, you will fail miserably. But for the grace of God, it was to serve as a daily reminder. And I titled my message a daily reminder because the rooster crows every day. Imagine the life of Peter after Jesus had come. I'm sure even when they are going somewhere and the rooster crows, he will turn to Jesus. I'm reminded. I know where the limits of my abilities are now. It will serve as a daily reminder. Even after Jesus left, I'm sure anytime Peter was tempted to look at himself and look down on others, he will be reminded, because that day the rooster will crow. So rooster crowing moments are not for us to continually hate ourselves. That is not the point. But it is for us to be humble and appreciate grace the more. If only we focus on how disappointing we were or have been, we do ourselves great injustice. It is a call to be humble. It is not a call to be boastful. And there is a quotation in Desire of Ages, page 329, which says that the elder brother of our race is by the eternal throne. He looks upon every soul that is turning his face towards him as the Savior. He knows by experience what are the weaknesses of humanity, what are our wants, and where lies the strength of our temptations. For he was in all points tempted like we are, yet without sin. He is watching over you. This is the part I like the most. He is watching over you, trembling child of God. Are you tempted? He will deliver. What do we say to that? Are you weak? He will strengthen. Are you ignorant? He will enlighten. Are you wounded? He will heal. He bids us to come to him. That is his invitation. Whatever your anxieties and trials, spread out your case before the Lord. This is in Desire of Ages, page 329. Now, in concluding, when the rooster crows, remember Peter. And remember that none of us is perfect and that we are just human after all. And know that there is no sin that we have committed that the love of Jesus cannot forgive and restore us. Some of us, when we are reminded of Peter, we only still keep going down. But this is a giant fall. Peter was not, okay, in the ranking in his mind, he wasn't closer to Judas, he was closer to Jesus. So this is a giant fall. Sometimes when we read these accounts, I want us to picture in our mind's eye, maybe in today's age, maybe a powerful speaker in the church, and the person falls, or maybe the person commits a blunder or something that is news all over, and then you hear these bloggers, vloggers, and everyone, an Adventist with a title, and everybody's clicking to watch. That is how giant Peter's fall was. It wasn't those who were following, maybe behind the crowd. No, that wasn't Peter's story. He was very close to Jesus. He was part of the three, the inner circle. But if someone like that could fall, the lesson for us is that none of us is infallible. But it is also a lesson for us that we should keep it in our minds that sometimes, like I said, when we look in the church, like what we are able to do, and then we compare, the problem we have sometimes is that we compare ourselves to the next person in the pew. He is not the standard. The standard is Jesus. And if you look at Jesus, you will not dare boast. So he should be the mirror that we look at. So it should tell us that there is no sin that Jesus cannot forgive. He forgave Peter. He forgave Mary Magdalene. He can forgive us too. And if you have your own rooster crowing moment, some of us have that. Some of us have experienced those moments in our life already. A time where we failed family, we disappoint. Some of us have those moments. But I want you to know that those moments are meant to teach you to depend fully on Jesus and live better. So some of us should stop condemning ourselves. We should accept our guilt and seek restoration. But I also know that some of us are too young to experience a rooster crowing moment. I'm saying some people are young. Some people are too young to experience. You've not experienced a major failure in your life yet. It doesn't mean, I'm not promising you are going to, but learn from the experience of Peter and learn from the experience of the older folk in the room, and never think of yourself more highly than you need to. So tomorrow, I'm sure the rooster will crow. If you live around areas where the rooster moves about, they will crow. Remember, it is a call to fully depend on God and be realistic about your own strength and weaknesses. There's a quotation I like to end my sermons with. 1 Corinthians 10 verse 12. It says that, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he falls. I like how the text is framed. Let him who thinks he stands. He didn't say you are standing. You think you are standing. But let's just assume you are standing. He says, take heed lest you fall. So in your mind, this person just came, he's now coming to church. It's past 12. Some of us, I'm closer to heaven than the one who just came. He says, be realistic about your own strength, but keep it in your mind that it should be a daily reminder that if for any day in our lives we leave God out, we might fail miserably. I pray the experiences of Peter and even your own experiences will keep you humble. And then it will keep God in first place in our mind that if not for his grace, we might do worse. I pray he blesses this for us in his name. Amen. I'll invite Elder Kuti, please.